Hello and welcome to Freya's tropical garden. We've had a break from that heat wave this week and we've actually had some rain, so the plants have absolutely loved it. Now, coming up on today's episode, I visit Arundel Castle and we take a look at their beautiful tropical gardens, as well as interviewing some of the experts at their summer plant fair. I reviewed 9 plant identification apps and I've given you my verdict. I visited the Chichester Chilli Festival and talked to some of the stallholders about the products that they sell, as well as some tips for growing chilies. And I've created a time-lapse video of the growth of my garden over 2 months. Finally, there's another chance to see my previous video on identifying Canna Virus. But first, let's take a look at how my garden's been getting on since episode 3. My garden is starting to get a bit more colour into it now since episode 3. Although there's still not a huge amount of flowers in the garden, one of the things that does make the biggest difference is this lovely splash of red that I get from the Begonia Santa Cruz and the Crocosmia lucifer. Although flowering at 2 different heights, it really does draw your eye in and complement each other. And of course, it really breaks up all that green foliage that I get in my tropical garden. I grow a few different varieties of Crocosmia in my garden, but Lucifer is the first one to flower this year. And my Stargazer lily has now opened up and is bringing a splash of colour to the back of the garden. This one was struggling a little bit this year after being infested with red lily beetle larvae. They look like little black droppings all over your lilies and particularly will live underneath the leaf where you don't see them, but they will decimate your leaves and your flowers if left unchecked. So it's really important to get a cloth or something and just wipe them away. And my Regale lily is also flowering at the moment and looking absolutely stunning. I'm still waiting for my tower lilies to flower, but they won't be long now. They look like they're on the verge of opening. And these yellow red hot pokers are popping up everywhere now around the garden. And of course my sunflowers will continue to keep flowering throughout the summer now. Although I still have several smaller plants that aren't flowering yet, so there'll be plenty more of them by the end of the year. Now, one plant tropical gardeners really don't want to see flowering is the bananas, because once the banana flowers, the tree dies. And unfortunately, my 3-year-old Musa Basju is now flowering. All is not lost, however, because it will produce pups like this Musa sycamensis, which has grown from a dead parent plant this winter. This is Miscanthus zebrinus, which is a type of grass which really has an attractive stripe, which is now really starting to appear at this time of year. And this is my variegated brunnera, which has this lovely striking colour in the leaf. However, you can see that the other part of this has reverted back to its original form, so I'm going to need to cut that out, and that will encourage the growth of the variegated leaf. The Liverstoner I bought a couple of weeks ago has suffered a little bit of sun scorch, so I've moved that under the bananas to protect it. And if you've been following, you might recognise this is how my Washingtonia palm tree was looking this winter, and now it's been coming back absolutely wonderfully with lush green leaves. And it also looks like there may be good news for my Phoenix canariensis. Even though this spear pulled, it looks as though there is a little green shoot of something starting to grow from within the crown, so hopefully all is not lost with this palm tree. A lot of my big-leafed plants are really starting to get going now, like this Tetrapanax and my Paulonia, which you may recall I pollarded and cut right back earlier in spring. But unfortunately it's growing up behind the crabapple tree, which is making it look a bit lost. The Ruum looks a bit straggly after flowering. I did leave this to go to seed because I was hoping to be able to collect some. However, most of the seeds have already fallen off. So I'm just going to cut back all these dead flower heads now, and that tidies the Ruum right up and it looks a lot better now. Now at this time of year it really does start to get difficult to walk along the paths of the tropical jungle. So I'm going to take you through here so you can see just how much I'm having to fight my way through. But then I always say that the sign of a successful tropical jungle is when you feel like you need a machete in order to get through. So a lot of these plants I'm going to be cutting back. Some of these cannas I'm actually going to be digging up, and you'll see my canna competition coming up in a moment. Now, I was determined to be ruthless with how much I start cutting things back to make the paths passable this year. However, I've got to say, I think that's easier said than done. But as you can see here, I have cut quite a few things back. There is a trail of destruction. And now when I take you back around this path, you can see it's now a lot easier for me to make my way along the pathway. There's still a few things that need to be perhaps tied back or cut back, but it's a lot better than it was. Some new plants in my garden this week include this sugarcane, which I bought on eBay, this Puya chilensis, which is a replacement for the one that died this winter, a new Albizia, a variety called Summer Chocolate, this Farfugium japonica, which I picked up at the Arundel Plant Fair, and finally these oxygenating plants, which I've added to my pond. This pond is not finished yet, but hopefully it will improve the water quality a bit. Now we're going to take a look at the Arundel Castle Tropical Gardens and their annual plant fair. Arundel Castle is well worth a visit in its own right. The original castle was built in the 11th century by Robert de Montgomery, and you can still walk around parts of the original castle, although most of it was damaged during the English Civil War, and later restored, which was completed in the 1900s. But you can walk around and see the living areas of this castle. But for me, the real beauty of this castle is its gardens, planted with so many tropical plants, and with several different beautiful water features, some of them quite unusual. Like this floating crown, which is just suspended on top of the water stream. There's 40 acres of gardens to explore here, including a glass house and rose gardens, as well as a beautiful kitchen garden. But it's mostly the tropical planting that I'm focused on today. There's a large variety of some of the UK's most hardy palm trees, as well as cordylines and yuccas, fatsias, tree ferns, and some lovely ruins. The head gardener here is Martin Duncan, and he manages this estate with a team of 7 gardeners and a few volunteers. And if you check out the Arundel Castle website, he does leave quite a few tips for gardeners. And I think you'll agree these are just stunning gardens to walk around. So this is the perfect setting for the summer plant fair. I'm here today in Arundel Castle for the summer plant fair. Arundel Castle in West Sussex is a fabulous location for the summer plants fair and forms part of the Plants Fair Roadshow. There are many different nurseries exhibiting and selling plants, including Miles' Japanese Aces and Fleur-de-lis, both of whom I've interviewed in episode 3 in a previous plant fair. But today I interview Steve from the No Name Nursery and Claire from Beaver Plants. I'm here with Steve at the No Name Nursery.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you came up with that name?
Yeah, so me and my partner Louise, we started the No Name Nursery. Literally, we're quite new. We've only been in business for the past year, and we're both gardeners in Sandwich. So we're East Kent, just past Canterbury, right down in the medieval town of Sandwich. And in Sandwich, there's the No Name Street and the No Name Shop. So we wanted something that gave a nod to our local town, but also because we didn't want to get pigeonholed into just one kind of plant, being known for one kind of plant. We grow lots of drought-tolerant herbaceous perennials, we grow lots of hardy exotics, but also just a really eclectic mix of plants, things that we like and we're interested in growing for our garden, and then we share that with other people. So we think of ourselves as gardeners first and growers second. And so the No Name Nursery just seemed like a nice nondescript way, because who really cares what a nursery is called? We're interested in good garden plants. That's what we all really want. Absolutely. Things that flick our switches.
Right, so would you like to tell us a little bit about some of these plants that you grow? Because I do feel like I'm walking through my own garden looking at some of these.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm sure a fellow exotic enthusiast, Tetrapanax Papyrifera rex or T-Rex, you know, that's just a great way of thinking of a Jurassic plant, if you like. If given time and enough shelter, these will form trunks, and they can come up with like huge umbrella-like leaves, almost a metre across. When I was head gardener at a country house called the Salutation, we had a small stand of Tetrapanax that reached about 3 metres high, so big that we were able to sit with tables and chairs underneath the stand of Tetrapanax. They were magnificent architectural and surprisingly hardy. Like all exotics, you know, you're gardening on the fringe. You can't guarantee hardiness of anything because so much of it has to do with how much moisture a plant's getting, how windy a location is, whether it's a frost pocket. But for an average UK winter, Tetrapanax are normally absolutely fine. Another interesting plant which catches people's eye is the Milianthus. And when you crush the foliage, it smells, and some people don't like it, it smells like peanut butter. That's what I think anyway. If you've got a peanut allergy, of course, you know, it might be a near-death experience, but no peanuts, you know, in the plant at all. But it does have that pungent smell, as some people refer to. I think of it as more like peanut butter. But one of the finest architectural foliage plants that is reasonably hardy. You know, you can get down to -10. The plant can take a real hit and almost melt back to the ground, but then reshoot again from the base and will make a surprisingly good comeback. You know, exotic gardens by their nature look at their best in the second half of the summer, which is also quite an appeal to me because traditional cottage gardens are often brilliant up until June, July, and then go off the boil a bit. Well, if you also incorporate exotics and plants of an exotic nature, then you can keep the show going right into the late autumn until the first frosts appear. You know, Farfugium japonicum, Oreo maculata, you know, some people, I mean, I look at that leaf and I think of, you know, the night sky almost like a constellation. For some people, they think it's been sprayed with herbicide. You know, it depends whether you like, you know, variegation or not. And so I think the gardening world is divided on variegation. I personally adore it. This plant is from the woodlands of Japan, and so it wants shade and it doesn't like to dry out. That's the key thing. Surprisingly hardy, so we find they stay evergreen until you get down to about -7 or 8, and then it will often retreat back into its rise zone. Used to be Farfugiums were Ligularia family, so they were classified as a Ligularia, and you can actually see in its leaf how you could understand, oh, okay, it kind of looks like a Ligularia, but much more leathery. And so the leaves, there's quite a commitment on the plant to create that leaf, so it wants to hang on to it, so it's virtually evergreen, only gives up on it if it gets really, really, really cold. And actually, often where you've got them in sheltered spots in a woodlandy garden, they tend to be more sheltered naturally anyway, so they tend to stay virtually evergreen. And of course they make excellent exotic subjects because of their nature, because of the way they look. They do, if they're very happy, have a big orange flower in the late summer, but primarily the reason to grow it is for this wonderful foliage. And underneath, so it could be the plants that provide the shade in the summer. So you might have towering cannas or a Tetrapanax or whatever large banana leaf above it, providing the shade for the Farfugium. They don't mind actually a bit of winter sun on them because there's not a lot of strength to the sun. But in the summer, they prefer to be in a shady spot. But that shade could be provided by foliage from your other exotic plants and not necessarily in a woodland setting in the UK. So that makes it a great subject for exotic gardening.
Fantastic, thank you. Now I gather you've got the National Garden Scheme coming up. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we opened for the Yellow Book. So the National Garden Scheme, and our garden is called Sweetbriar, and we are open next weekend. Let me just have a look and tell you. We are open on the 9th, Sunday the 9th of July. Our home is called Sweetbriar, which kind of thinks all romantic cottage garden, and our front garden is a really traditional cottage garden. Our back garden is a exotic paradise, and We named our home Sweetbriar because the Sweetbriar rose was the first plant that me and Louise grew together from seed when we were seeing each other. So we named our home Sweetbriar. Such romantics. Well, I'm the romantic. No, Louise equally, you know, we share a wonderful love of gardens and plants, hence the reason why we have a nursery and we work together as gardeners and as nursery folk on our wonderful no-name nursery. But this will be open next weekend, the 9th of July, for anybody who'd like to come see us. We have plants for sale, lovely homemade cake by Betty, and a cup of tea, of course, as well. That's absolutely necessary if you're visiting a garden for the National Garden Scheme.
I'm here with Claire from Beaver Plants, and Claire grows a lot of pond plants.
Yeah.
Claire, I've got a really tiny little puddle, if you like, in my garden.
Yeah.
Could you give me some advice? What sort of plants might suit that environment?
You can have, if it's just a small pond, you don't need to have a big pond. You can have a small pond and you just can have one lily in it if you want. Depends how deep it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be too deep. Lilies do like to go quite deep and be fully submerged. So ideally a couple of foot would be ideal. It depends how deep your pond is. And then you just leave it and it can just grow and it will just flower in the summer, and it will die back like most aquatics. They do die back come September, October time when it starts getting cold, and then they'll come back again in April, March, April, depending on when the weather is warm enough. Flowers, they generally flower in the summer, obviously, as you can tell with the lilies. They can't always guarantee a flower, but it's a nice foliage. It's good oxygenating for your plant. Also, we've got oxygenating plants which do just as well. They help oxygenate the plant, and they can go submerged, fully submerged as well, and they can help. Other pond plants you can have, there's some pondside that we call pondside, so they don't necessarily like to go in the water, but around the pond, close to the pond's edge, if you know what I mean, and they'll do well there. Some can go some deeper, so some that are like zone 3 can go deeper, like your Pondoterias or your Equisitums or something like that, which is always favourite. This is a Pondoteria here. This is an Iris versicolor, and that can go fairly. So as long as it's covering the pot, it should be okay, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it should be fine. Oxygenators can go fully submerged, like I said. They're good for oxygenating. Some you probably won't see, some will just stay at the surface of the bottom. The Hipparus you should see. Some of the short growing ones like Anagallis, I don't know necessarily. I know it got its flower, so it might reach up to the top, if you know what I mean. Because they're submergents, they like to be quite deep, a couple of foot deep, if that makes sense.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about Beaver Plants themselves? How did you get started? Where are you based?
So we're based in East Grinstead in West Sussex. We're just on the borders of Surrey and Sussex, West Sussex, sorry, apologies. My dad established the business. We're celebrating 50 years this year.
Oh, congratulations.
So yeah, 50 years this year, and he started it with his dad, and then he took over and his dad became ill, as you do as you get older. And he's just established it. We started off as aquatics, and then we sort of branched out to do other things like cannas, as you can see, garden plants like agapanthus. We don't have agapanthus here at the minute, but cannas, bananas, your cypresses, your ferns, your hostas and stuff. But we do mainly aquatics like water plants, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what we specialise in, and we sell a lot to garden centres across the UK, up Scotland as well. We supply them. We're mainly wholesale and only do the odd retail show. So yeah, we can sell across the country to your local garden centre.
Next up, we're going to take a look at my review of some plant identification apps. I've downloaded 9 apps for my Android device on Google Play, and I'll be testing their abilities to identify different plants. And if you want more information on the methods that I've used, I'll put them in the description. But firstly, I had to discount iNaturalist from this because it wasn't actually a plant identification app. Instead, when I scanned my plant, it was giving me the option to add it as an observation. I've shown it here because some people might find that useful. Next, I've reviewed an app called Blossom. This cost £22.99 a year at the time of filming, But I've only used the free trials for all these apps. And unfortunately, in the case of Blossom and the next two that I review, they give you a very limited number of plants that you can try before you buy. So this has meant that I haven't been able to review the app fully. However, I have managed to get enough information, I think, to show you a reasonable comparison. Now, I've actually given this app my lowest score for ease of use because after identifying the plant, it's then taken me through this series of questions, none of which are actually relevant to my outdoor plants as they relate more to indoor plants. So possibly this app might work better for houseplants. But certainly for the 3 plants that I tried, it only got 1 right. So for me, this was my least favourite out of the apps. Next up, I reviewed an app called Plant Snap. This also gave me only a limited number of identifications, but this one only costs $9.99 a year at the time of recording. This app required me to take 3 different pictures of each plant and limited me to 5 plants on this trial, and it got 3 out of those 5 right. And in addition to that, it does actually give you a choice of different plants. So if the first one it comes up with isn't the right plant, it does allow you to choose from some other options that might be more suitable. I have scored these apps based on the first suggestion, so if I had have scored in a different way, then this may have ended up scoring a little higher because it did suggest the correct plant here. And the last app that placed limitations on my ability to review is called Plant App. This one is by far the most expensive at £209.99. However, they claim this is for a lifetime payment rather than every year. I scored it 8 out of 10 for ease of use. However, for accuracy, it would only allow me to test it on 2 plants, and it only got 1 out of those 2 correct. Although I did also have to rescan the Tetrapanax because it wasn't fully in the shot. However, it did also get that one wrong as well. So picture this as the first app that I was able to fully review. It is quite pricey at $35.49 a year, but I was able to test this one on 14 different plants. I scored it 8 out of 10 for ease of use. It was the second highest score in terms of accuracy, and also included a feature for diagnosing problems with plants. Plant Parent is a very similar app which also has a diagnostic feature. It's slightly cheaper at $28.99 per year, and I scored this 8 out of 10 for ease of use as well. And accuracy-wise, it only scored 1 point behind Picture This. I also like the fact that it will point out any sick-looking plant at the point of identification. Flora Incognita is the first of the free apps which I've reviewed, and although I really do like the layout of this app, I gave it 6 out of 10 for ease of use simply because they ask us to identify what kind of plant it is first. There wasn't always a suitable category for every plant that I tested, so I did tend to just stick on the main flower category, which may have affected its accuracy ratings. However, this didn't do too badly, but it did have the lowest accuracy ratings of all the ones I was able to test fully, but only by a very small margin. PlantNet, I have to say, was one of my favourites. This is another free app, and this is the one that scored the highest accuracy rating out of all the apps that I tested. I scored it 7 out of 10 for ease of use. However, that was only down to this next step of having to identify if it was a leaf or a flower, etc. But in addition to scoring most highly on the suggested plant, it also had other suggestions that you could select. And you can see here there are quite a few suggestions you can scroll through. So overall, considering its ease of use and accuracy and the fact that it's free of charge, I did find this one to be the best plant app that I reviewed. However, you may want to consider another one if you're looking for something that can also diagnose problems. And finally, I tested Google Lens, which is something that I know a lot of people will have anyway because it does other functions, not just plant testing. This is again free of charge, and the accuracy was not too bad on this, scoring only 1 less than Plant Parent. However, the real advantage of this one is its ease of use, which I scored 10 out of 10. It was very much a point-and-click exercise, where it then scans Google and comes up with suggestions, taking you to Google pages that give you more information about the plant as well. And as you can see with this ginger that I've scored, lower down the search options you can find the correct plant, increasing those accuracy ratings. So, although my personal favourite was PlantNet, I hope this video has given you enough information to be able to make a decision on which app would suit you best.
Next, we go to Chichester for the Chili and Cheese Festival. I'm here in Chichester for the Cheese and Chili Festival.
I've come here to Chichester to talk to some of the stallholders about the products that they sell and get some tips from people about how to grow chilies.
I'm Dom from Carrington Foods, and I do sauces, oils, jams and marinades. So we've got everything from sort of mild to pretty crazy, but nothing too sort of sinister. I tend to go on the sweeter side of things, so less of the vinegar but more of the fruity sort of sweeter flavours. So the chili chop's my mildest one, that one's nice and sweet, and then the flaming chop's my hottest one. Yeah, we'd like to use fresh flavours and nice hot chilies, so yeah, come and give them a try.
My name's Ian Mabber, I run Mab Sauces. I created this range of sauces for a heat challenge for my 50th birthday. So I used to have a number 1 to 10, but we've slowly gone away from that, and we're selling the Cajun themed sauces now, the original and the smoky. But we also have various other chilies, Scotch bonnet, a scorpion, ghost chili, and now we've got our Reaper family. So we've got Baby Reaper, Mummy Reaper and Daddy Reaper. This is 6% Reaper, this is 31%, and this is 31% plus 9 million Scoville extract. So this, several people for today have actually come around and told us that this is potentially the hottest sauce here today.
Now, unfortunately, a technical error means that I wasn't able to bring you the video from Steve from the Super Hot Chili Company, but please head over to their Facebook page so that you can see more about what they're selling. Next, I speak to Russell from Grim Reaper Foods.
Back in 2009, I started it as a hobby. I went to a chili festival in Stevenage, which was called Bennington, and I went around and tried all the chili sauces, chili products, and I either found loads of flavour without heat or loads of heat without flavour. So my mission was to go bang in the middle and get hot products but with taste. So first one I did, Evil One, was developed back in 2009, and it was made with oranges and lemons and nagers. It's evolved to use ghost peppers now and Scotch bonnet as a background, but it's a signature sauce. It's probably been my best seller over all the years that we've been doing it. But we also do a range of cold pressed rapeseed oils, dry rubs, chocolates, extracts and snacks. Those things I can't show you today because they're gone, but yeah, it's been quite good. We've been trading on Amazon. We've had international sales through Canada, America, Australia, South Africa, most of Europe. But after Brexit, the European stuff died off, which is a shame. But you can still find us online in the UK, and yeah, we trade at these events, which is fun.
Good afternoon, I'm Paul from the Coastal Chili Company. Our business is by the sea in the Solent at Warsash. We have half an acre of glass and we grow about 5,000 chilies with fruit every year, and we do half a dozen chili festivals, of which this is our first of 6. So quite excited that as we enter July we will start to have our fresh chilies available, and we grow between 75 and 100 different varieties, both for sale of the plants and for fresh chilies. We also sell seeds. What else do we sell? We sell the dried chilies, chili grinders, and whilst it's not my full-time job, it's my full-time passion. And today has been a wonderful day. It's been really busy, and we've had some very happy customers because we tend to grow the more unusual, the hotter chilies. So one of them, Dragon's Breath, is allegedly even hotter than Carolina Reaper, and yeah, very happy customers to get something new or different. Tips: the worst thing that can happen is people kill the chilies with kindness, so they think more water is good and more water is bad, so you can actually drown the chilies. So you need to let them dry out between waterings. virtually all compost is now peat-free, and one of the quirks of peat-free compost is the surface gets very dry. It looks like the plants are thirsty and need a drink, but if you feel the weight of the pot, you will find that they don't need a drink, and you must let them dry out. When you do water them, if you water them with a tomato feed, and when you do start cropping, pick them regularly, because you will get more flowers, more fruit, and any excess fruit that is too much to give to friends or family or use yourself can be frozen, dried, pickled, and yeah, happy chilli growing.
Coming up next, I would like to show you my time-lapse video of the garden growth over the last 2 months. At the end of April, I was showing you all my tropical garden, and I was, to be honest, a little bit embarrassed because it does not look anything like what I know it would normally look like. Hopefully you've now all seen just how much of a jungle garden I really grow here. But it was at this point that I decided to start my time-lapse video. I took this photo, making sure I was aware of the zoom setting that I was on, and used this marker point of a washing line hole to make sure I stood on the same point each time. And I tried to take daily photos, although they were probably more every other day, right up until the point where I had to move all my chilli plants onto the grass so they could get the maximum sun throughout the day. Unfortunately, this got in the way of my daily photos, so I had to stop at this point. But I've still managed to demonstrate a good 2 months of growth. And apart from some bigger changes, like planting my strelitzia in place of my dead Unsete, and of course I've planted some new plants that I bought along the way. However, this is my time-lapse video for 2 months of growth of my tropical garden. Unfortunately, it was a lot harder to paste these photos together than I thought it was going to be. I've tried to use my fence as my reference point to keep everything smooth, but even doing that, I've found that it was really difficult to try and get everything sized exactly right. And I also think that there's probably too much to look at here in one go. So in my next attempt, I think I'll focus on a bed at a time. But I hope you've enjoyed watching my 2 months time-lapse video. And next, there's another chance to see my previous video on Canna Virus. Many tropical gardeners grow canna. However, it is really important to be aware of this virus because introducing just one disease plant into your garden can spread throughout your canna collection, as well as further afield to other gardens. As you can see from the photos here, one of the most striking characteristics are the stripe in the leaf. Although the tiny spots seen in this photo here are typical of another variety of the virus. Virus canna will usually exhibit stunted growth and will likely eventually stop flowering. It is thought the disease spreads by aphid, so it's really important to destroy your plants if you feel that they've got the virus, in order to stop it spreading to other plants. You should always burn the diseased canna and not put it on your compost heap where it could spread further. If you're not sure if your canna's virused, it would be a good idea to join a Facebook group and share photos of it so other people can give you their opinions. This is a photo of a canna that I used to own, and it doesn't look typically virused. So these stripes are not typical of how the canna is supposed to look. For years it did have stunted growth and didn't flower. So as a precaution, I destroyed it to prevent any spread to other plants. This is the same variety of canna, and this is what the healthy plant should look like. You can see the stripes on this are much clearer. Canna Stuttgart is another example of a canna that has a healthy stripe in it, and in this example is not virused. If you'd like any more information on Canna Virus, you can go to my website, www.freyastropicalgarden.co.uk, where I'll be adding a page on Canna Virus within the next few days. Now is competition time, and I've divided some of my canna plants, and I'm giving people an opportunity to win them. To enter, just make sure you're following Freya's Tropical Garden on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, and share the post relating to the competition. This is open to UK residents only, so please comment to confirm. Well, that's all we've got time for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and please don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Here are those details again for my Twitter, Instagram and Facebook accounts. And please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you've enjoyed the content.